Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about the absolute best low-key watch brands. Now, what is a low-key watch brand? Another word or term for this may be an under-the-radar watch, or a watch brand rather, that would not get noticed by everyone. In today's climate, in certain places, there are situations where people may not want to wear watches that are noticeable, like a Rolex, like a Patek Philippe Nautilus, or maybe an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. You know, the watches that people notice, but sometimes people don't want to wear these watches for a whole number of reasons, depending where you are, the situation you're in, you name it. Sometimes people want a low-key or under-the-radar watch. And with watches becoming so popular today, a lot of the great and high-quality watches happen to be noticeable, for better or worse, right? It's a double-edged sword. People noticing watches more means that the values on them have gone up for people that own them, and more people are into watch collecting. But on the other side, it also does mean that people may think a certain thing, perhaps even a target for some things that could happen, such as, robbery, this and that, which does happen when we're talking about very expensive items. So low-key watches, watch brands that you can wear and to be very unlikely that they will be noticed. We'll cover that in just a second, but on my wrist today, Cartier, vintage Cartier automatic compressor. I love this watch. You can see more about this watch, very rare watch, as well as others on my Instagram, The Real John P. And also, guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, where you can find many low-key watch brands, but also some, I guess you'd call them high-key watch brands as well, right? We do more than just Rolex. We also handle brands such as Sinn and Grand Seiko, which kind of takes us into our list here. The first watch brand that is low-key but quality is going to be Sinn. And by the way, I'm going to be covering this from most approachable to least approachable in terms of pricing, so there should be something for everyone. Now, Sinn is a watch brand, a German watch brand that produces very quality, rugged, durable watch cases. They use standard ETA and value movements, among others, so rugged, durable, solid workhorse movements, but the quality in the watches is really there. And when we're talking about watches in the several $1,000s and under price point, it's difficult to beat Sinn. Now, if they had branding that was more universal and more people recognize them, probably the prices would go up, but Sinn watches absolutely have no problem at attracting customers. And you can see here a picture of a recent release that sold out immediately on the authorized dealer website for the United States, kind of the interesting Rolex-esque, interesting color dials. They sold out immediately. So this brand is becoming hot, but in the collector community. So I don't think you have anything to worry about if you're looking for an under the radar or a low-key watch. Now that takes us into Grand Seiko. Now Grand Seiko is just that, a Grand Seiko, a very good Seiko watch. Now I'm not saying anything negative about Seiko watches in general, but certainly this is their pinnacle of watchmaking from the Seiko Corporation. Essentially, this is the creme de la creme. This is where they really focus their absolute high-end watchmaking, and they create watches that rival truly, the greats that have existed for centuries at this point, right? Think certain watches like Patek Philippe, they have masterpiece watches at Grand Seiko that can rival some of the best manufacturers that exist, but they also have more approachable watches. Many of you can see these, or many models are available at Delray Watch, but they do have a little bit of something for everyone. But one thing is for certain, is they're not universally recognizable. I have a friend, we were actually just mountain climbing out in Colorado, and he had his Grand Seiko with him, and he was rest assured that he was very comfortable wearing this out and about in certain circumstances and places where, maybe it would not make the most sense to be wearing a very expensive watch. But I, on the other hand, was wearing a Rolex, and, there's certain ways that these things can kind of be perceived sometimes in certain places and situations. So the Grand Seiko really flew more under the radar, and the quality is there. The dials are absolutely to die for. Gorgeous dial construction. I could say a lot about what Grand Seiko is doing, but for sure, they fly today under the radar. That's changing, but today they're under the radar and low key. Now, this takes us into a German brand. Germany has come a long way in terms of watchmaking, as we know with A. Lange & some of the others, but what we have here today is Glashütte Original. They produce watches that are just not that recognizable outside of the watch collecting community. Now, probably the most popular watch they offer is the CQ, their rendition of a diver, something in line with a Rolex Submariner, right? People collect dive watches. This is a very high-end, superlative quality dive watch. I've done a video where I truly did scrutinize this watch when it was originally announced. Glashütte Original reached out to me and they wanted me to do a review. There was a bit of a mixed volley back and forth with words, and I didn't actually receive their piece because I wanted to keep it very unbiased. But I'll say that pleasantly, I've been surprised taking these in at Del Rey Watch over the last few years. It was just such a great watch. Very high-end, very quality. The case construction, very in line with that German manufacturing. It was just such a nice watch, the CQ. And I've held so many others and played with them as well, because go figure, we get in a lot of these types of watches. We kind of specialize sometimes in the low-key watch brands and the value-driven watch brands. They deliver so much value, especially when you can find a discount. So Glashütte Original, not going to get noticed. You are going to get that dive watch feel when we're talking about the CQ and some of the others. And I think it is a very nice touch to that low-key watch collection. Now that takes us into another watch brand that I truly do enjoy. This is Habring. This is going to be a company that is run by a husband and wife duo, Richard and Maria Habring, based out of Austria. They will retrofit and modify other movements out there to make them more sophisticated and call them their own. They also produce in-house movements to a degree, but where they specialize in a couple of different things, including the crown-activated chronograph, which is a very interesting complication. Among other things, very small batch, independent manufacturer that they really do truly a great job. And this is a watch that a watch geek or enthusiast can really enjoy without attracting attention per se, because Habring is just not a brand that anyone outside of enthusiasts is really going to recognize, except perhaps if you live down the street from Maria and Richard Habring. So Habring is a brand I would check out if you're into under the radar and looking for something a little bit fun and quirky and of quality and that attention to detail. Now this takes us into H. Moser. If you watch this channel or you watch Federico Talks Watches channel, or perhaps you go to delreywatch.com, you know that we believe in H. Moser. You know, we enjoy, and I myself enjoy what they do fully in-house. Everything they do is entirely created by them or a company that they own. And I think there's a lot of value in that. They also limited their production, right? We're talking a very small number of watches they produce. Retail prices are going up, but I get it. Things of prices are going up in general, so I can't knock them too much for that. But you can also find these in the secondhand market today at really great value. Setting aside the value, most of their watches are very plain in terms of branding, right? You look at their dials, they specialize in these fume dials and these very intricate or special looking dials that even when simple and plain have a certain level of depth. There's a lot of focus on the dial and the simplicity and making that their kind of niche and attractiveness. Things are changing. They've come out with more complicated versions of their watches, but that is kind of the overall aesthetic behind the H. Moser brand that we know and I know, love, and enjoy. But certainly no one's going to recognize this, right? The branding is not there, and at the same time, it's very high quality. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And if you're looking for that high quality independent manufacturer, truly all in-house, limited production, and you're in this price point of $10,000 plus, it really is difficult to find a low-key watch brand that beats H. Moser. Now, lastly, is a brand that is recognizable, though because of them being kind of pushed to the wayside in favor of other watch brands and kind of the such rapid growth of the watch industry, they have become low-key, and this is going to be Piaget. Now, Piaget is noticeable in certain markets like Asia. The Piaget brand just seems to do better than in the United States and parts of Europe. Different reasoning for that. We're not going to get into that. But one thing for sure is if you wear something like a Piaget Polo S, you can get a lot of the same look and feel of perhaps a Patek Philippe Nautilus or that kind of integrated design sport watch that does have the heritage and the quality of having an in-house manufacturer movement and some branding heritage and recognition without necessarily being recognized by everyone, right? You wear a Patek Philippe Nautilus, people are going to recognize it. You wear a Rolex Daytona, everyone is going to recognize it. You wear a Piaget Polo S, you really need to know your stuff. You need to know watches to know that particular watch, or perhaps you live in that one market where they just happen to sell. But nonetheless, that is up for you to decide. But I think that the Piaget Polo S and a lot of the other watches like the Altiplano are just such great quality. And once again, I think there's a lot of value there as well. Still having that heritage and branding and the quality, getting a good deal helps, but not going to get recognized, and it's going to be low key. Now, what do we think out there? Do any of you have any brands that you love and enjoy, and you do so, or at least one of the components of reasoning behind that is that it's not noticeable? I know there's a lot of Sinn collectors out there. We could have talked about Nomos, and even in the past, we could have talked about Vacheron and Journe, but the reality is today, a lot of these brands have developed a following that's kind of branched out into pop culture, but there still is a lot in terms of watches that we can enjoy if we're looking for a low-key watch. For example, no one's going to recognize this. I like that about this. But when I wear my Rolex Always Perpetual 39, everyone recognizes it because of those classic features that come with brands such as Rolex. What do you think? Love to hear it and see it in the comments below. Guys, please do not forget to check out my Instagram, TheRealJohnP, as well as DelReyWatch.com. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.